This is Big Podcast.
It's Build a Big Podcast, the marketing podcast for podcasters. David Hooper here with you. Bigpodcast.com is the site. On that site, you will see sign up for a newsletter that I have. It is delivered to you every week. Every Friday morning, you will get it. Friday morning for the United States, elsewhere in the world. Your time of day may vary, but it does go out every week. And every week, I have an audio version of this podcast. This podcast, it is the marketing podcast for podcasters. It is designed to help you grow your audience, get more people to your episodes, get people talking about them, making episodes that get attention, get listened to, get shared. If you're interested in what I'm talking about, bigpodcast.com is the website. This issue of the newsletter, I started off talking about Ukraine, kind of heavy. It's a big deal, man. But I want you to think about the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Before he got into politics, he was a comedian. He's an actor, screenwriter, film producer. I've got a link to his IMDb page, and it is long. In fact, one of the most successful shows that he did in Ukraine, he was playing the president of Ukraine. He was talking about corruption. He ended up doing a lot of the stuff in real life that he was doing on this television show. So sort of an interesting story. Sometimes this happens, and this may have happened to you. We play a role on our podcast and in our media, and people think that we know something that we don't because of the role that we play within the podcast. And you will see this if you have, for example, a romance actor or a romance writer. Oh, you must have a great relationship. Maybe, maybe not. And in podcasting, this is often how that works out. If you're good at one thing, let's say you're talking about business and financing, people think that you are good at another thing. You'll find that people start asking you questions about health or relationships. You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was just talking about money, man. I don't want to get in on this. But I think that's the power of podcasting. It enables you to seem like you've got your act together, maybe in more ways than you do. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, he was one of these guys that obviously he got elected. So somebody thought he had it together. But up until a few weeks ago, he was still considered an unproven leader. And Ukrainians had mixed feelings about him. This whole impeachment thing with Donald Trump, the phone call, the very perfect phone call, do you remember that? That was with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. And Trump, he's kind of manipulating him. That's what it sounds like to me. So you've got this brand new leader. I don't know how old he is. He's in his 30s, 40s, a young leader when you're considering somebody who's on the world stage. Having this guy who's a lot of bravado from arguably a more powerful nation, sort of working him into a situation that he wasn't prepared to do. So Ukrainians, they had mixed feelings about him. Not anymore, though. You know what's happening in Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, he is in the trenches with his people when it counts. And that is beyond risky. In the last week, assassins have tried to kill him at least 3 times. That's 3 times that we know about. None of them worked. He's still alive, still in the trenches with his people. And I bring this up to say this. When you were in the trenches, when you were eating your own cooking, that is the kind of thing that gets you respect. It gets people to follow you. Or in the case of you as a podcaster, it gets people to listen to you. I once knew a hotel manager. She was telling me about a crazy party at the hotel. These guys had trashed the room. She said, I got up there and cleaned with my staff. I'm not going to ask them to do anything that I would not do. Was it her job to get up there and clean? No, it was not. But her job was to motivate the staff. Her job was to lead the organization. And she felt that part of that was getting in there and cleaning. That's the same kind of thing that we need to do as podcasters, eating our own cooking, getting in the trenches with people. Now, I want to say this because this is a super sensitive topic. What's happening in Ukraine, this invasion? I know a lot of people are frustrated by that. I am frustrated by that. What can we do as people or as podcasters? I do not have the perfect answer for that. But here's something that we can do in general that's going to improve on how people get along with each other. And that is by telling the stories of people, letting other people get to know the people that we're telling the stories of. It is hard to hate people when you know their stories. In this episode, for this issue, I've got some info for you on how to develop and spread your personal brand, how to get more episode downloads by using episode titles, and make your podcast interactive with listeners by allowing them to call in and leave messages for you. I've got a great way to do that. It's a relatively new system. You may not know about it, but I'm going to tell you about it on this episode. All of the links, the written newsletter, it is at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. It is a free newsletter. There's no obligation for you to stay on it. If you go to newsletter.bigpodcast.com, sign up for it, check it out. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, great. One click, it'll let you unsubscribe. We'll part as friends. No hard feelings. I'm not even going to know. So don't feel like you're getting into something that you're not going to be able to get out of. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com, that gets you all the links, all the stories delivered to you in your email Friday morning, my time, whenever that is for you. And then I'll follow up with some additional commentary here on Build a Big Podcast. For that, if you're not subscribed, you know how to subscribe to a podcast. You're a podcaster. But if you want an easy way to do it, bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Let's talk about your personal brand. Here's how to build your personal brand, and also by doing that, grow your podcast audience. So much about podcasting is what I call non-podcasting stuff. If you think about that, most of the top podcasters actually come from other types of media, and all of them have a very strong personal brand. Bill Rice, you don't know that name, but you will once you read this article. He runs a digital agency, and he shows you how you can organize and launch your personal brand in a matter of hours. You're already doing some of these things via your podcast, so it might take you even less time. This is linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. It's a quick Twitter thread. It'll take you just a few minutes to look at it. It'll take you just a few hours to do it. But putting this information into action is definitely worth your time. You could be up and running on a new personal brand by tomorrow. So check it out, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. What about more listeners? You want that? You want more downloads for your episode? This is how to do it. You don't have to change a thing about your episode, except you might want to take a look at your episode titles. I've got some episode title templates for you. These are 7 high converting, what I would call headline formulas that can be easily used to create podcast episode titles that will increase your downloads and your listeners. Let me give you an example. How to get blank, that's a result, quickly, it's a time, and without risk. How to get more Twitter followers in 24 hours with just 20 minutes of work. It's a result, very specific. More Twitter followers quickly within 24 hours. That's not bad. 20 minutes to do it. That's not a huge time risk. You or anybody else would think completely differently about this. If I were to say how to get more Twitter followers in the next 10 years, who cares? We're not thinking that far ahead, but we are thinking ahead to the next 24 hours. We are thinking ahead to the next 20 minutes. You're looking at your clock right now. Okay, in 20 minutes, I could do this, have it done, and in the next 24 hours, have more Twitter followers. That's not bad. So that's a good formula. How to get blank result, and then the time frame, and then put something in about no risk. Here's another one. How to eliminate a specific pain without more pain. How to lose 20 pounds without diet and exercise. How many times have we heard that? You could do that with your podcast. This podcast, Build a Big Podcast. How to get more people to listen to your podcast without having to change your episode. That's what I just promised you. These episode templates. There's some good ones. They are linked, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. I'm not exaggerating when I say that a good episode title can get you 10 times the downloads as a bad episode title. I'm not talking about SEO. I'm talking about somebody who sees that title and is interested in downloading your episodes. You may have a subscriber. You're not necessarily downloading every single episode. A lot of podcasts I'm subscribed to, I'll see, oh, this guy's got a new episode. This guy's got 3 or 4 episodes. I'm not downloading everything. I don't care about interviews with certain people, but I do care about interviews with other people. And if they've got one of those interviews or they've got one of these great titles that's promising me something that I want, I'm going to download it. That's how this works. There's no trickery, just psychology. So if you want more listeners, use these episode title templates, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. That has them linked. I'm loving this next one. Receive audio messages and donations from listeners. One of the things that I miss about live radio is the ability to take calls from people in the audience, people who are listening, and bring them into an episode. It was so great when I was on live radio, and I could say, all right, call me up, 555-1234. Next caller gets tickets. What do you want to hear? Let me know. 555-1234. Somebody will call in. You put them on the air. You've got an interaction. You really feel like you're part of the community. You're getting instant feedback as to how you were doing. You do not have that with podcast, but you do have Pod Inbox. It's pretty close. With Pod Inbox, listeners can leave an audio message for you to play on episodes or just respond to. You can respond to listeners directly via Pod Inbox. If you want to see how this works, Pod Inbox, podinbox.com/bigpodcast. If you got a question about how to grow your podcast audience, you just want to see how it works, you just want to say, hey, Dave, heard you on your podcast. That's okay. Check out how it works because it may work for you. Pod Inbox has a free option. I'm not trying to sell you anything. Is there a paid option? Yes. Will it work for you? Maybe. Go take a look at the free option, though. Go take a look at how I'm using it. podinbox.com/bigpodcast. This is one of the best things that you can do to make your podcast more interesting to listeners. When you've got a variety of voices, not just you, as much as you love to hear your own voice, but something to break that up, something to show that you've got an audience, something to show that listeners are part of a community, something to show social proof, that is going to make your podcast more compelling to people who are listening, even if they never reach out to you. And most people will not. But for those who do, it is nice for them to have an opportunity to do that. It's super easy. Podinbox.com. That's the website. I've got everything linked. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. If you use this, reach out to me. Let me know how you're using it. I would love to talk to you about it. I'd love to see how you're doing it. Like I said, how I'm using it is if you've got a question about podcast marketing, get on Pod Inbox, ask it. I will answer it. Maybe you just want feedback. Maybe you're like Casey Kasem, you want to do a long distance dedication. The ways that you can use it are unlimited. I'm curious about how you're going to use it. Check it out. If you dive in there, I would love to hear how you're using it. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com for all the links and more information. If you are thinking about doing an online course, I've got a guide that will help you. It's not my guide. It's a guide that I'm linking to. There are services like ThriveCard. You know ThriveCard? They have made it easy for you to do something like an online course, some kind of training, something that can monetize your podcast. And that's why I'm mentioning this here, because so many podcasters, they're supplementing what they do with their podcast with additional training. Online training is a great way to do it. Anyway, ThriveCart's got this new thing. It's something that they just added, and it makes it so easy for you to put something like this online. The big player in the space at one time, Teachable. Teachable gets expensive. The higher end Teachable, the one that you really need to do ins and outs of billing and building community and getting them on their way when they're done, that can be $100 a month. ThriveCart with this built-in thing, and I'm not trying to sell ThriveCart here. I want to talk about the big concept of it. It is so much easier and cheaper than it was. So more podcasters are looking at this. But running an online community takes a lot of work. This is why I'm bringing it up. Sometimes the big idea that we think will be helpful to our customers, it's not what they're looking for. I've seen so many podcasters that say, hey, I want to monetize my podcast. They go out and they do an online course. Ooh, crickets. They're speaking of crickets. Nobody's interested. They like the podcast, not necessarily into the course. The wrong stuff, the wrong price. There are a lot of things that can go wrong when you try to monetize your podcast via an online course. With that said, there are a lot of things that can go right. And I've seen guys go from hobbyist podcasters to full-time podcasters, meaning the podcast is what drives the online course when they do this right. And this guide, and it's linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com, it is free. It is going to help you create your online course. It's going to show you how to test your idea before you launch, as well as how to make sure your listeners know about the launch without annoying them. That's important. We've all heard this podcast, especially during book launches. Buy my book. Get one for your car, one for your office, one for a friend. Buy 12 of them and you'll get a free NFT. We know those launches. It's a turnoff, right? I mean, they work to some level, but if you're not interested in doing that and you're looking for other options, this is that other option. It is linked, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. What about your slow podcast production time? It takes a while. The podcast that you are hearing right now, I want you to look at the timer on your podcast player. How long have I been going for? What you see is completely different from what I see. Right now, I'm 23 minutes in. You can see how I've cut all the unneeded fat out of this episode. And that's not including the planning. And that's not including the editing, and that's not including the marketing and the episode notes and the post-production, making my voice sound better than it did when it came out of my mouth and into this mic. It takes a minute to get a podcast episode out. You know that. But how can you make your slow podcast production go faster? I've linked to an article. It's really for writers, but as a podcaster, you're going to completely relate to it. When it comes to your podcast production, let me ask you this. Do these things sound familiar? Do you think the first draft has to be perfect? Do you have an inner critic that is out of control? Is the environment that you're creating your podcast, is it the perfect environment for you to do that? This guy's got a simple process. I've reworked it for podcasters. It will help you fix these things and allow you to ultimately create something great. If you want it, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Once you go through this, you are ready to record something. It will be somewhat organized. It will make your recording and your post-production so much easier, so much faster. You're going to like this. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Try it on your next episode. Let me know how it works for you. You can reach out to me, bigpodcast.com. I'm on Twitter, @DavidHooper. I'm going to wrap this up, taking this thing full circle back to the very beginning when I was talking about Ukraine, talking about what we can learn from Ukraine's president, being that kind of leader. I am right now looking for Ukrainian podcasters, Ukrainian journalists, people who have boots on the ground in Ukraine. I want to do some podcast and radio production for you. I'm not going to charge you for it. We're going to help you get your message out. So if you are a Ukrainian podcaster, a journalist, you are somebody who's interested in getting that story out. Again, you got to be somebody who's got boots on the ground. This is going to go to an American audience, so it needs to be in English, or I need somebody from your team that can translate these things for me. This is something that I'm doing because I want to help you get your message out. This is not a pitch for you to hire me for this. We're going to work on this together. There's no charge on my end for this to happen for you. I'm going to help you get your message out via podcasting. I'm going to help you get your message out via radio. So if that is you, or you know somebody who fits that criteria, in Ukraine, boots on the ground, journalist, podcaster, somebody who's experiencing something where that message needs to get out, let's make that happen. Reach out to me. Bigpodcast.com is a site. We're going to do this. I'm going to help you get your message out, and we're going to get people talking about what's happening, and we're going to try to drive some real change for you and your country. So reach out to me, bigpodcast.com, and everybody else, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Subscribe to the podcast. One click is all it takes. I've got an iPhone link, an Android link, an RSS link. One click. You'll never miss an episode. I got good stuff coming. I've got a book coming out. I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks. Who knows? I think it's going to be out this month, but I'm not going to rush things. The manuscript is done. It's getting to final edit right now. Cover's done. Title's done. I'm excited to release it. Can't talk more about it yet, but if you go to bigpodcast.com/subscribe, make sure you get on the podcast and not miss an episode. You won't miss when I announce that. Thank you so much. Stay well. Take care of each other, and I'll see you on the next episode.